Hi there, I'm Deep Dylan. Welcome to your AI Injection, the podcast where we discuss state-of-the-art techniques in artificial intelligence with a focus on how these capabilities are used to transform organizations, making them more efficient, impactful, and successful. Welcome back to your AI Injection. This week, we're going to dig in on deepfakes. That's the tech we've all seen of videos like Tom Cruise or President Obama saying things they most definitely did not say. Today, we're speaking with Dr. Ilke Demir. Ilke received her Ph.D. in CS from Purdue University and is currently a senior research scientist at Intel Corporation last year. Ilke released a publication about deepfake detection using a tool called FakeCatcher. I'm thrilled to have her on the podcast this week so we can learn more about deepfake technology. So thanks so much for being here. Please set the context for our discussion. What are deepfakes? Just at a very high level, like how do they work from a deep learning / AI perspective?
Right. So deepfakes are videos where the actor or the action of the actor are not real. So imagine me talking like this, like doing all like facial like enactment, but it's not real. It's someone else playing like me, or it's my visuals, but my voice is synthetic, or it may even be just imagery-based deepfake. So any of those like very like high-level people or like celebrity videos that are not real, that are done with deep learning approaches are mostly called deepfakes.
Tell us a little bit about like what changed in the machine learning world that allowed somebody to take, let's say, this video of, everybody's seen the Tom Cruise video at this point where he looks like he's saying things that he clearly didn't say. What changed? What's making that happen now?
Right. So as you know, like we had Photoshop for many, many years, right? Like we were able to edit videos, edit imagery. There are very talented artists out there that make us believe things that are not real. But the thing that changed, that enabled all of these like rise of deepfakes is actually GANs, generative adversarial networks, that are deep generative approaches, which are fueled by deep learning, like those like different layers of all the weights and input-output relations, and learning to actually create that very realistic samples from the learned distribution. So as the data is increasing in image domain, like we have, for example, if I want to create a deepfake of you, I need many image samples from you. And then again, we'll learn how to recreate you in the way that we can actually control, or we can modify. Not maybe control as like exactly where your mouth is, but to reenact things based on another image or target video. So all the advancements in deep learning, like novel approaches as GANs, or like 3D reenactments, or like more learning-based 3D blend shapes, are enabling all those deepfakes with respect to all of these approaches really being democratized, right? Like deepfakes are not just in the research labs anymore. There are many tools that are open sourced and made available to the public. So
just to be clear, so to make a deepfake, you need an input image or set of images of the target. So let's say we want to get President Biden to say whatever we want. So we need images of the president. Then we're going to have our own video saying with our eye expressions, our own expressions. And then we're going to apply this transformation to that image. And then suddenly we're going to be able to create this world where Biden's saying whatever we want. Is that correct in essence?
Right. In a sense, it's correct. Sometimes it doesn't need to be like specific images of one person. That is more towards like reenactment or like 2D, 3D replaying of the actor. In general, GANs can be like imagery of many people so that you can actually capture the distribution of those images, especially for image-based deepfakes. So for those, you need like many images to actually capture the distribution of that data.
The person who you're trying to fake, if you will, how many images of them do you need? And what are the characterizations of those images?
There are many GANs. There are many approaches that you can use, but most of them are in facial domain. So it's mostly like a portrait video where the face is segmented, and face is either created by those GANs or it is modified to fit a 3D model. And that 3D model may be recreated from an actual like many multi-view imagery of that person, or it may be a generic target 3D model where you fit the textures of that person into that generic 3D model so that you don't represent the detailed 3D geometry, but you represent the face by the textures, not just the geometry itself. So there are several approaches, but the main thing is like you need that source model or imagery or video and the target imagery video. If I am being like voiced by someone else, I need that someone else's video to be the source to transfer my new reenactment.
So let's take a specific case. Let's say you have one image of the target. We've got a video of what we want the target to say. Walk us through at a high level, like what is the high level learning that takes place? What is the adversarial part of the GAN? And how do we get this model to learn this?
So again, as I said, there are several approaches for that, but especially for the case that you mentioned, the GAN has different losses that you can manipulate or you can like develop it, right? So one of them is the reconstruction loss, for example. What you create at the end, is it similar to what you captured as the input? The input and output are known. For example, like you are trying to mimic a person smiling and you already have a smiling version of that face. And in the training phase, you can actually do that like reconstruction loss, where they're saying that, okay, like what I learned through the network, is it creating the same as what I gave as the input? You can do landmark transformation loss, for example. So moving in the target, like moving the ends of my lips from here to here, which is smile action. If this is in the target, then you want to animate the source like that. You can also find the transformation between the landmark points. Are they the same or not?
You're learning how to take two images and figure out how to transform one into the other. And then you're learning that for that trigger image between it, you're now applying that transformation to every frame in the video. Is that about right?
Yes, that is one of the ways. So you may learn the transformation, you may learn the morphing, and you may learn to create a completely novel image. So that is not trying to transform the image that you already have, but it is trying to create something that doesn't exist from the whole distribution of image space. So generally, those are like more image-based GANs. The listeners don't know, GANs have like a generative part and a discriminating part. So generative part is taking noise and trying to create realistic images and trying to trick the discriminator, saying that, look, this is a real image. And the discriminator is trying to distinguish between the real ones and the fake ones and trying to catch the generator creating those fake images, saying that, no, this is not realistic enough. This is fake. So to the discriminator, you give the output of the generator and the real images. And the generator, you can, like in the very basic version of the GAN, you give like white noise to actually shift that white noise to the actual distribution of pixels in the image. In the very basic version, GANs work. It is a game between the discriminator and the generator. Now, there are many different variations, like for GANs, like there are conditional GANs, there's bidirectional GANs, there's like all types of GANs in 2D and 3D. And it all arises from the fact that you can do many different things with the noise. You can put multiple generators or multiple discriminators, or you can condition the output of generator based on the initial distribution, etc. So all of these are enabling those very realistic, very high resolution deepfakes nowadays.
So what does it mean to catch these images? So set the context for us. You know, you've got Facebook, you've got Twitter, you got all these social media platforms. I believe all of them have policies saying they don't want deepfakes, on their platforms, but maybe if I'm wrong, enlighten us. And what are they doing to go about actually detecting these fakes? And once they find them, what are they doing? Are they marking them up so everybody knows it's fake?
Yeah, so as deepfakes are rising in quality and quantity, deepfake detection methods are also rising in, hopefully, quality and quantity. And so there are many different ways to look whether something is a deepfake or not for videos, right? If you look at the very basic GAN architecture that we just mentioned, right? Discriminator itself is actually a detector. It's trying to detect whether the thing that comes from the generator is actually fake or not.
Just to be clear, like when you're training it and it's detecting whether it's fake or not, it's because on the one side, you've created the image of Joe Biden projected onto this fake video. And then on the other side is, that particular frame of the video is real.
Yes, that's in the training.
Just to be clear for the audience. Okay.
For detection, there are several approaches. So one of them is to actually look at the GAN and try to find the residual noise, the noise that the GAN itself creates without being aware of it in the actual deepfakes. So you can imagine it as compression artifacts, right? Like in the early days for image forgery, there was JPEG compression artifacts that you can say, oh yeah, this is not the original image, it is compressed or it is modified, etc., etc. So similar to that, GANs also have those artifacts. And some of the deepfake detectors are actually classifying deepfakes or finding deepfakes based on those residues. There are more generalized deepfakes that is not specific to each GAN because there are so many GANs, right? And those are looking at authenticity clues. And when I talk about authenticity, it is what is unique to humans, right? Like I'm talking here, I'm looking at you, I have a consistency by myself. We can call these like biological signals or physiological signals. And those authenticity-based deepfake detectors are trying to find what is special to real videos as opposed to what is special to fake videos.
Just to understand the difference between the detector in the GAN that built the deepfake and the one that you're describing is that the former is built primarily and solely based on that video that it's trying to create a fake of? Did I understand that right? Or
no, both of them are on many images or many videos. The distinction is that the first discriminator is specific to its generator. So it's not working in like detectors for other fakes that are created by other generators, right? Yes. But in the generalized version of deepfake detectors, it is any given video. And in addition, it may even be the case that those videos are post-processed. So maybe there's a deepfake of me, but you change the background or change the lighting or do some like post-processing or compress the video. And those generalized deepfake detectors are still expected to find that it is fake.
Where does this wind up? I mean, is this ultimately a cat and mouse game between the level of compute resources and data you use to train the detector versus the level of compute resources you use to create a fake? And we're overall trying to just have the quote good guys on one side with a lot more GPU and CPU capability to just train a more accurate detector, or is it a different game than that?
As you said, like it's an arms race, right? Like the more high quality GANs we have, the more high quality detectors we hope we have. For the residues, the GANs are also getting a little bit better in that space that they are trying to not create those like side effects or side signals. But for the authenticity signals, that's a little bit harder for GANs to actually replicate. Some of those authenticity signals, for example, one of them is the eyes and gaze that we use. It is a little bit easier if you want to design a GAN. You can actually try to build that loss function with the eye and gaze features and try to learn those like eye and gaze features so that you can create more realistic deepfakes. But there are other signals that are really not that easy to mimic. For example, PPG signals. So you may say, what is PPG? PPG is short for photoplethysmography. I know, big word. Photoplethysmography is detecting heart rate from video remotely. So when you look at me like this, there are color changes on my skin that is due to oxygen being in my veins. And we can actually use that signal to detect deepfakes. And this signal is really hard to replicate with a GAN because it needs like very complex relations to preserve very complex correlations between many places on your face that we extract the signals, their spatial and temporal correlation and spectral correlation should be preserved. And it is very hard for a GAN to learn that still.
Are these signals that a regular human has a lot of intuition about? Like, does this fall into the uncanny valley where we just know something strange about this image, but we don't know what? Or is this something that flies under the radar of a normal individual human's perception?
You may not see it is invisible to the eye, but computationally it is visible. If you remember, there was an MIT paper that was changing the color of a baby based on the heart rate. If you amplify those PPG signals on the video, you can actually see your heart rate like changing color. Like I am going like from white to red, red to white based on my heart rate if you amplify those signals. But without that amplification, it is not visible to the eye.
You're listening to Your AI Injection, brought to you by Xionyx.com. That's XYONIX.com. Check out our website for more content, or if you need help injecting AI into your organization. So if you can leverage some kind of biological signal like that on the detection side, then why can't you leverage that sort of a signal on the fake creation side?
Yeah, as I just said before, the relations of those signals from many places in your face is really hard to replicate. So you need to keep their spectral correlation, you need to keep their temporal correlation, you need to keep their spatial correlation, and the GAN is not able to learn all of that. And even if the formulation of the PPG signals is not very intuitive to put it into a loss function that you can backpropagate, because that is not a linear process to extract the PPG signals. Even if you want to approximate PPG signals instead of extracting them by the actual function, you need very large PPG data sets to learn approximating it from. And there is not such big data sets that are with like actual PPG signals. There are some remote data sets, there are some small data sets, but they are not really comprehensive enough that you can represent the PPG signal for the whole population, for all the skin tones, for like all the ages, etc. So that's why it's very hard to replicate PPG signals in fakes.
So how effective are these, deepfake detectors?
That's a very good question. And the answer depends on the data set, and then we can assess it in the wild case, right? So for different data sets, for example, the PPG-based detector that I mentioned, we have all the way from like 93% to 99% on state-of-the-art academic data sets. And those data sets are like relatively large data sets, like thousands of videos and then millions of image frames. And we can really have that like up to 99% accuracy.
Is that accuracy at the video level or at the frame level?
Video level. Video level. We actually have 3 levels. We don't do image based because we cannot extract signal from an image, right? Mm-hmm. We do it
because you're kind of honing in on this heartbeat, like.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So we are extracting that signal from many places on your face.
From all the pixel changes on the face. Uh-huh.
Yep. And then we are correlating them spatially and spectrally and temporally. So even if there are some image distortions or some lighting changes or some part of the image you don't see the face, or like there's like very fast movements, you can still see that relatively enough of them agrees for real ones, and for fake ones, they are everywhere. There is no structure, no periodicity for the signal.
Let me just see if I can summarize. So in the case of a real video of a human face or body, you're going to have a pixel on one point of the face. It's going to have this periodicity to it. And that's because it's basically tracking the heartbeat of the human. Mm-hmm. And in the fakes, what's happening is they're not really so concerned about that. They're optimizing authenticity in a different way, in just a general sort of perceptual way. And in that case, this is like a byproduct that neither the deepfake generators or humans really hone in on. Yep. That's clever. So what was the original scenario for detecting heartbeats? How did that come about in the first place? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that was a research that was done in MIT from Bill Freeman's group. I don't want to give misinformation. I'm sorry about that. I don't remember the original paper more than that. But the origins of remote PPG signals are to monitor patients through video. So if a patient cannot go to the hospital, they need some care, they can just look at the video and at least see that their heart is beating as normal, or they have like heart rate, etc. Especially when the babies are like in those glass areas where you cannot like actually go and touch the baby or like do some measurements on the baby. You can actually remove the look that like, okay, baby is still breathing, still the heart rate is this, etc., etc. So that was more like patient monitoring.
So the inevitable question here, which I think most people who are non-technical overlook, is there's usually like an incredible amount of positive uses of a technology. So maybe walk us through some like legitimate uses of these GANs and the quote deepfake capabilities, because I think there's just a lot of them that, maybe on the surface you don't think about.
The first research approaches that are supporting deepfake, that are like enabling deepfakes, were for legit users such as digital humans, for example. So in AR and VR, now that we are going into Metaverse, right? So we want to be ourselves in that Metaverse, right? Like in AR and VR world. And how do we do that? We cannot, with the headset, obviously, we cannot actually look at what we are seeing. So we need to create ourselves in 3D. And how do we do that? Deepfakes or facial reenactment or 3D deepfakes, right? So that was one of the first cases that was avatars, and digital humans was one of the first positive cases that this research was supporting. Another one is visual effects, and for basically like relieving us from physical dependencies, right? If we want an actor to be in our movie, but that actor cannot travel, or they have some limitations, they don't want to jump from there, etc., you can actually do deepfakes of them so that the stunt or the actually physically not possible situation is being reanimated by the like normal video of those people. And that was that AR series that we were shooting in the studio. So we shot the first 2 episodes of this, and the 3rd episode, there was COVID. So no one was able to move anywhere. They were not able to come to the studio so that we can 3D capture them. But for the main person, we had his earlier captures in 3D and 2D. So we just let him record a 2D video of himself in his home. And then we applied that facial reenactment to take that video and make the 3D capture that we had from previous episodes talk and move like whatever he is doing in a 2D video. So that is like the most realistic legit case that we use deepfakes in our studio. So
yeah, and I think that's, like everybody's been kind of making fun of this metaverse lately, but I think, me personally, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, I kind of got into this stuff and spent some time back when, VRML and everybody thought, the 3D internet was going to happen around the corner. But now, it does seem like we're getting a lot closer to some sort of world because a good chunk of the workforce in the world is working remote now. Right now we're talking over a Zoom call, we're interacting in a flat 2D way. But if you look at some of the, there's some pretty wild work coming out of like Facebook Reality Labs. So tell me, like, what's the state of the art there? Have we gotten to the point where we can handle, the uncanny valley problem that you see where, the reason most of the 3D movies we saw 15, 20 years ago, like, Pixar Toy Story, was these cartoon characters, and a lot of it was because people got creeped out when we tried to make actual humanoid looking characters. But how close are we getting to being able to take like me and you and move this conversation from 2D Zoom into 3D metaverse world and have both of us genuinely able to kind of move around in that space and not have it look, cartoonish or just creepy?
Yeah, right. So there are trade-offs in that world, right? And all the research is trying to balance or find a middle ground in this trade-off. So the 2 ends are scaling and details. So for the Facebook case, for example, the setup is small enough that the cameras that very multi-view imagery and the lighting sources are close enough to the face so that you can maybe get pore level details in your facial capture. And then, of course, with codec avatars and other technologies that come from FRL, you can actually carry that conversation into there. But in that case, you may be very realistic upper body, but below we don't see, or that the capture is not that good, or the resolution is not that good. And the other end is scaling to the actual world, right? So in that case, I will give you an example again from Intel Studios. There's a demo scene that we shot in the studio at the very early stage where there was a real horse running in the dome, and we can capture even the dust particles that are flying around the horse in 3D. So that is the realism that you get. And that enables so many possibilities. For example, in the real world, maybe you may not be able to see the world from the horse's point of view, right? You cannot just put a camera on the horse, it will fall or something. But when you do it volumetrically, you can actually put your camera everywhere. It's a 3D world. You can watch from everywhere. And you don't even need to project it in 2D. You can let the audience watch from wherever you want. They may be the gut point of view. They may watch it from the person that is being beaten, or they may watch it from the horse,
How is that instrumented? Because these people who are in this dome world, are they all instrumented with cameras?
No, they are free. There is no
Okay, so does the dome itself have the cameras and it's
Yes.
able to project into any 3D point?
Yes. So the dome itself has 100 cameras, all of them recording in 8K resolution. And we have 270 gigabyte per second data coming from all of those cameras. So just imagine how much data we are dealing with.
I see. So yeah, I mean, I can imagine like the appeal to a director for making a film is A, I don't have to go on set. B, I can have much more fantastical sets. C, I don't have to reshoot from different angles and scenes. I just have them acted out, and then I can do that in post-production where I'm moving the camera all throughout the scene. I mean, that seems pretty compelling. Map it back to the deep fakes. Like, what's the technical linkage to the deep fake world here?
The first capture of that person, of that actor that I mentioned, was done in the dome. But if we want to reanimate him doing something else or saying something else, we can actually do the 3D deepfake version of it. We can also, as I said, like in the dome, we can relieve the physical limitations of the world. Like, I'm not a visual effects person, but normally how 3D visual effects are done is by compositing, by putting like layer by layer, or by object detection and like applying the visual effects to the objects that are being in focus or something. But when you capture everything in 3D, you actually have the world. Like, you have all the spatial relations, all the empty volume or all the non-empty volume, you have everything. So if you want to add an object, if you want to make some smoke simulation, if you want to add some fires, everything is spatially very accurate. So that is another step towards like 3D movies and 3D visual effects, that we can actually do everything much more realistically because you have the real 3D information there. Deepfakes also cover those like scene manipulation, fake objects, any manipulation that you do in the video or the actual like effect, right?
Let's jump ahead 10 years. So 10 years has passed. Ilke, tell us, what does the world look like? And let's look at it from a few different angles. So let's first take the news, and then we'll look at maybe this metaverse business. In the news case, we don't have prolific deepfakes kind of consuming the news yet. But, you know, we have an alternate reality amongst a good 30-40% of our population. People believe all kinds of bizarre, crazy things that are completely unlinked to reality, you know, whether it's the January 6th insurrection about the election, or whether it's anti-vax conspiracy theories. How much worse is this going to get in 10 years, you know, or is it going to get better?
Right. To answer that question, we need different shades of glasses. We either have that like very dark glasses that we are looking to that dystopian future.
For our audience's benefit, I have some orange tinted glasses because fall here in Seattle is very dark. And I thought if I can have Instagram filters on my photos, then why not in my reality? So
that's very nice perspective. So yeah, we have that like very dark dystopian glasses versus the utopian glasses where everything is like very nicely. So I want to discuss those. Hopefully we will be somewhere in the middle, but I want to first like look at the utopian case. So in Intel, we are looking at provenance as the long-term option. So detection is okay, kind of working right now. It may work a little bit, then GANs may get better, etc. So detection may be an intermediate solution that we are marking or warning everyone, etc.
Just to be clear, so in the provenance case, I'm the AP Newswire. I'm a credible organization. I have a cameraman sitting or a camerawoman sitting in wherever, Afghanistan, France, whatever. I know that their hardware produced this camera, and then somehow in that image or in that video, I know that I can track that provenance all the way back to the organization with credibility. Is that the high-level concept?
All the way from the capture device to the consumer, you need that verification, which can't be spoofed, which is like secure, so that like there is a check mark or some authenticity here saying that, okay, we know the origin, we know it is not modified from the origin was this credible source or this not credible source, but this was the origin, like, the provenance of
So
it.
how do you encode that, and how do you not spoof the origin?
There are several entry points that you can do. So if we can gather all the camera manufacturers in the world and give some kind of hash or watermark that they can put, which can be spoofed with algorithms or even with blockchain or something, then they can have that token all the way through the pipeline. Or it may be the Zoom in the software case, that somehow Zoom knows that from camera to Zoom software, there has not been any modification or interception, so that Zoom can authenticate that, okay, this is what I get, and this is the watermark. And if there's any modification, any fake, any alteration to this video, the watermark will just poof, vanish or something. So there are different cases for this provenance approach. We are still exploring, and we are still trying to build a consortium around it. And when we have that, we want all of those companies, software hardware companies, to be on par, because deepfakes for bad users, we still don't want, no one wants deepfakes to be around, right? For positive use cases, we can have provenance for GANs, right? For positive use cases, we can also have provenance approaches inside those GANs, so that when GANs create something fake, we know the origin of the GAN, and we know who created that GAN, and we know which algorithm created or which dataset created that GAN. And for positive use cases, we will still have that watermark of fake authenticity by that GAN, so that it's not used for malicious users. If you are, for example, using Adobe software and you are using neural feed filters, you want those neural feed filters. You want your face to be, beautiful, right? But Adobe can actually mark that, saying that this is an authentic GAN. This is it is a GAN still, but it is a verified GAN. So those are the provenance approaches we are talking about.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense for, kind of rational, geeky people like you and I. It just seems really complex for people who are already susceptible to bizarre conspiracy theories. You and I can understand this, but can, somebody who's invading the Capitol on January 6th, are they going to buy into this, or just twist it into some new conspiracy theory? It feels like we're entering a world where even the most basic things, sort of negative actors, are able to manipulate them and cause effect in the world in a way that you couldn't do 40 or 50 years ago, or even maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, actually, in some publications, we actually formulated this as social erosion of trust.
Yes, that's probably the perfect 3 words to pick. Yes, that's exactly what's happening, right? I have very bright friends who are I don't know what to believe. And, I'm trying to explain my highly nuanced way of parsing reality. And it's not a simple thing anymore, because we have such a distortion of economic incentives for, distorted reality.
One of the point of views that we haven't talked about is actually legal ways to stop deepfakes. And I am not an expert in that at all. It's just based on my very limited conversations with my colleagues that are very specializing in that area. But we also hope that some legislations and some actual laws that are stopping deepfakes from being spread, being generated, being trained, etc., may increase the speed of the deepfakes a little bit, even if we cannot stop them totally.
You can imagine some just overt penalties for creating a deep fake without disclosing it. It's one thing to do it for entertainment purposes. It's another thing to do it with clear malicious intent. And I don't know the state of the law, but I'm just going to guess it's so far behind on basic internet issues that it's probably just non-existent, virtually non-existent in this case. But I'm sure there's some precedent law that helps out. So we talked about the 10 years ahead on the news front. What's the 10 years ahead vision you have in the metaverse front?
I definitely believe that we will be in 3D. We will be having this conversation in 3D and maybe walking each other, looking wherever we want. I don't need to look at you. I can look at wherever I want. But the problem is, how much weight will I be carrying on my head? Or will it be glasses like yours, like that? Or will it be a contact lens? Or will my whole environment be projected there somehow? Or is it just my, keyboard here and some background will be projected there? So I think the answer to that, will we be doing this in 3D? obviously. But
really? I don't know. Let me tell you something. In 1995, I worked at an R&D lab back in Massachusetts. Every day for a good 3 or 4 weeks of my life, I would wake up, I would go to work, I would enter a 3D world. And in that 3D world, I had spatialized audio. I was a disembodied head. I could blink. I had like facial gestures. And I would meet with an architect who was architecting a 3D world that we were building. I would meet with a scene designer in the world. We were all disembodied heads walking around, all in 3D. That experience to this day is better than the experience I have right now with you talking to you. And that was, a long time ago. It's mind-boggling to me that we still don't meet that way. So I guess I'm like way more skeptical than everybody else. People have been predicting that the 2D internet's going to go to a 3D internet since I was, in school. I mean, like forever. And on top of that, we thought we were late at that time because there were environments like Habitude in the 70s that were already doing this sort of thing. What's the theory as to why now?
There are several fronts for that, but I completely agree. For example, like Ramesh Raskar from MIT, which was also my postdoc advisor, he has a paper called Office of the Future, I guess, from 90s, I guess, maybe even before. I don't remember the exact time, but from that time, saying that in future, our offices will be fully 3D, all the holograms everywhere, like very futuristic thing. And even that time, we know that we were going to end up there. But I think the blockers were seriously like the compute power. So we didn't have powerful chips and powerful, Moore's law, right? Like the transistor.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we didn't have this much small compute power to actually power the headsets. Another one is adoption, for example. So how many big companies were actually trying to make that community, make that like 3D realm where you can actually have your own space and I don't know, like I recently heard the news about like real estate agents trying to find some parcels in 3D metaverse. Like, like this is adoption, like all of the sectors, all of the parts of economy trying to find their portion in that 3D world. That was not the case because it was not as realistic. It was not as adopted. Now that like those big companies are actually taking a stance in metaverse, everyone is like, yeah, this is happening. This is there. I want to be a part of it. And not only the researchers and scientific people, but also the general public is trying to go towards adoption in 3D. The transition to mobile world was not like really that easy, right? Like we didn't have that like very sophisticated mobile phones in a day. We had all the way from the actual like home phones that didn't have cables, then the smaller, then like fully effective touch screens, everything with our faces, etc. Right? So VR is also going there. Like if you remember the very old VRs headsets, like you need to be plugged, or maybe there were like the room space VR devices that you go like a spaceship, etc. Right? Like from all the way to the glasses, hopefully to the glasses that you carry right now, we are following the same transition from that like phone to like phones that we have, to the like room space VR devices, to the glasses
VR. I see. All right. Well, thanks a ton. I mean, I think this was a fascinating conversation. I know we covered a lot of terrain. We started off, heavy in the deepfake arena, and then we covered a lot of metaverse and, and fake news and all kinds of stuff. So it's been a lot of fun. So thanks so much for taking the time, for enlightening us with your perspective, Ilke.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very fun conversation. Maybe just as a last note, hopefully we will have that real-time deepfake detection platform based on FakeCatcher algorithm that I talked about, like
awesome,
etc. So whenever it is online, everyone can go and like upload whatever video you want and see whether it is fake or not. Hopefully soon.
All right. Thanks a ton. That's all for your AI injection. Many thanks to Ilke Demir for being such an enlightening guest. You can find out more about Ilke's work at ilkedemir.weebly.com. That's ilkedemir.weebly.com. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. We're a new podcast, so please tell your friends about us, give us a review and any other social media love you can. You can also check out our past podcast episodes at podcast.xionics.com or on your regular podcast platform. That's all for this episode. I'm Deep Dylan, your host, saying check back soon for your next AI injection. In the meantime, if you need help injecting AI into your business, reach out to us at xionyx.com. That's XYONIX.com. Whether it's text, audio, video, or other business data, we help all kinds of organizations like yours automatically find and operationalize transformative insights.